This is the Cereal at Midnight podcast. Hello and welcome to the Cereal at Midnight podcast. My name is Heath Holland, and I've got a great conversation for you in this episode. But first, please subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment. If you are listening wherever you get your podcasts, rate and review this podcast. These are things that you can do to directly support this show, to help us to be seen and discovered by new people, and that's the name of the game. You can contact me directly at CerealMidnite@gmail.com. I'm on Instagram, Cereal Midnight. I'm on Twitter, Cereal Midnight. Anywhere you would expect to find Cereal at Midnight, there I am. I'm even on TikTok. So the conversation you're about to hear is, really, I love it. I'm so proud of this. So I'm talking to John Newton, a.k.a. John Haymes Newton, which is his screen acting name. John has had such an interesting career. Melrose Place, Models, Inc., the Untouchables series. You know, we think about the Untouchables, right? So there was a series in the 50s that was based on Eliot Ness's sort of his story, his memoirs, his book. But they make a series about that in the 50s, and then that inspires the 80s movie, Brian De Palma, What Are You Prepared to Do? That sort of thing. And then they bring it back to television. So TV to movie, back to TV in 1993. And John Newton is one of the main cast in the Untouchables 1993 series. He's in Alive, the movie Alive, directed by Frank Marshall. But what opened the door for this conversation is that he's Superboy in the first season of Superboy. So in the 1980s, Christopher Reeve is Superman on the big screen. The producers want to bring Superman to the small screen, to television. And they can't call it Superman because of reasons that John tells us in this interview. But they are looking for a Superboy, and it's John Haymes Newton. And I am so interested in this because this is a series that shot in Florida, shot at the MGM, Disney's MGM Hollywood Studios in Florida. They're making this series in the 80s. It's such an interesting time in entertainment history. And why did John not return as he's only Superboy in the first season? So why did he not return for seasons 2, 3, and 4? He tells us. You can get the information on the internet. You can hear from different places. Here's him telling the story directly himself. He auditioned for Friends. Guys, we talk about Desert Kickboxer, which is an amazing early 90s action movie, sort of a low-budget action movie, but it's wonderful. It's fantastic stuff. All of this is covered in this. But what's really interesting here is that John has now transitioned into helping people, which you can tell when he talks about it. This is what he's supposed to do. This is his calling in life. This is his passion. So he has such remarkable perspective on his career. He has fun stories about the things that he's done. But what really, is sort of the uplifting end note here is that he has transitioned into something that is really helping, starting as Superboy and then where he is now helping people. It's such an interesting career trajectory. I had a blast talking to John Newton. So guys, I hope you enjoy this as much as I did. John Newton. So you're born in North Carolina, right? You're a Carolina boy.
Yeah.
How do you end up in the pitches? How do what's your road? Like, is this something you always aspired to, or was it a long road to get there?
I'll give you the really short version. So I'm a junior in was I a junior or a senior in high school? And I had to take an elective, and I wanted to leave school early because I hated school. I was terrible at school. And so there was two choices: advanced auto mechanics, which I knew nothing about, and all the guys in there pretty much wanted to kick my butt anyway all the time. So I was a little afraid of that. And the other was advanced acting, and I'd never taken acting before. And they said, well, you got to get permission. So I go to the acting teacher. I'm like, pretending to want to be into acting. And I say, I'd love to get into this. And he goes, okay, well, and like a half-hour interview. And he goes, well, you have to agree to 3 plays. I'm like, 3 plays? I've never been in a play in my life, right? Yeah. And so long story short, I ended up doing 3 plays, small parts usually. And then when I graduated, I was like, what am I going to do now? So I moved to New York City to study acting and all that. Long story shortened of that one, did a lot of theater, a lot of crappy theater, but finished a 2-year program. and then was back in North Carolina on vacation, just randomly. Literally, I just graduated from my 2-year program where you're not allowed to audition or anything. You have to commit to the program. And I went to see the studios in Wilmington, and Lynn Stallmaster, who cast Superman, all the, big casting director in the 70s before you were born. And he's like, we're casting this movie Weekend at Bernie's. Can you come back tomorrow and audition? I'm like, yeah. So I auditioned. He goes, this is really great. Would you be interested in a TV series? I'm like, yeah, the actors will do anything, right? And pretty much early on, especially. So yeah, I came back the next day and auditioned for the Superboy series, Young Superman in college. They couldn't call it Young Superman because the Salkinds had leased the rights out to the canon. I'm sure you know all that. Yeah. And then, yeah, went back to New York, and then they flew me to Florida, I think, for a screen test, and I got to put on Chris Reeve's costume, and then it really hit me. It's like, for the screen test, I'm like walking around in Chris Reeve's costume. We didn't know how to put the cape on properly, so the straps are on the outside of the costume. Once we figured it out, we realized we didn't have time to take the whole top off, put the cape on the inside because of how the cape attaches. Anyway, tested for that, went back to New York, and then got the job, moved to Florida, within a week or two. It was crazy fast.
That whole thing is crazy. So did you feel, Superman, Superboy, how about, it's Superboy, right? But it's Superman, it's Clark Kent, it's Kal, right? That's a daunting, that's a huge thing. Did you feel any sort of, I don't know, was it overwhelming at all? Were you worried about, you're literally wearing Christopher Reeve's costume. Yeah. Were you worried about that at all?
I would say I was worried. I felt like an imposter, I felt like, did I sneak in here and no one realized I'm full of crap and I suck and this is happening? It was like, I always felt that way. It was just, I was like a punk at the time, I hadn't faced my dark night of the soul. I hadn't done any internal, really confronting my fears. And so I was just kind of I don't know. I just kind of skated through and what am I doing here? And I just never felt oh, I've arrived. I didn't have that feeling.
Yeah.
At all. But yeah, it was intimidating, and it was all the same people from the movies, and the wire guys, the effects guys, the line producer. They were bringing in Colin Chilvers to direct, and he was the effects, had done a bunch of features. They had a decent, and then they brought in writers from dated writers from the 70s and stuff like that. So a lot of our early scripts were a little weak, if you want to call it that. Got better in the second 13 to pick up. So
right. Yeah. They brought comics creators in too, which I noticed. Denny O'Neil comes in and writes some stuff. They bring in Mixie's Pitalik as a character. Michael J. Pollard, right?
Oh, he was awesome. You couldn't keep a straight face. You're trying to get your lines down, and he's off camera. You're reading with him, and he's just he trying to make you laugh because that's just his personality. Right. He was hilarious. Yeah. I brought in Cary Bates. So Cary Bates was a DC guy. And I was like, why don't we bring in these comic writers in? Because they were bringing in Star Trek writers from the first Star Trek. These are guys who weren't plugged into what was hip and cool and all that. And they're like, Cary submitted some stuff. Cary doesn't remember this. I talked to him years later. He goes, well, I don't know if you brought me in. I'm like, seriously, dude? I don't really care. But anyway, yeah. So they started bringing in more people that got the world, as opposed to, Hollywood. It doesn't always translate, Star Trek and things like that. So,
yeah. Did you filming in Florida? This is like the very beginning of the that Disney MGM Studios lot, right? They're just starting to film things right there. Kind of an experimental model, wasn't it? How did that go?
Yes, it was very much experimental. It was Florida was a right to work state, so there's many reasons producers want to shoot there because it's obviously cheaper. But you also get the quality of some of your support is they're learning as they go. A lot of us were learning as we went, and then of course we had some veteran people on that were knew what they were doing. So it was a combination of things, but we kind of learned as we went, and it was definitely a new frontier down there. I know they probably are they still shooting a lot of stuff down there? Do you know?
I don't know that they are.
I don't hear about it much. But
everything's in Georgia now, right? It's all
there's a lot of places now, but back then this was 1988. Mm-hmm. That was the last century. Yeah, so it was a different time, different place, and of course Florida was 100% humidity, 90 degrees, and we're filming in the direct sun, and I can't sweat in the costume. You get this big dark marks of, it's just brutal. So that was like a constant battle. I had to kind of use mind over matter to not sweat. And then of course, sometimes you just sweat. But that was interesting part of it.
And you didn't have a whole lot of costumes either. Like, you can't just go do a costume change and come right back, can you?
No, we had like we had a flying costume, we had a walking costume, we had a costume that could go underwater, because the very first scene that we ever shot, I'm coming out of a swimming pool. And so it's like the boots are full of water. I mean, it was a mess. I don't know whose idea that was, pretty much destroyed that costume. We didn't have a lot in the first several episodes. Chris Reeves' costumes were what we used. We'd modified them. He's a little taller than me and all that. And the underwear was really high, like in the 70s. You remember the tighty whities that were really hot? That was the style. So I was like, guys, you got to trim that down, because they kept it right. And I was like, it looked like grandpa's, grandpa pulls his pants up to here,
Right.
And I was like, no. So and then Disney, the costume department, was working with us, which never happens. They don't work with outside kind of people, but they did. And they replicated some costumes. And so we started having our own costumes, which was nice. And then boots were made, and,
Did you talk to Christopher Reeve at all? Was there any sort of were you concerned about taking on this mantle? Because you obviously didn't know that in 2023, somebody like me is going to go, hey, would you be willing to talk to me about your time in the series?
Yeah, I don't think Christopher Reeve gave a rat's about anything related. I think he'd moved on, in many ways.
Yeah.
Had he had his accident by then? I don't think he had.
No, that was like 96 or 95, maybe.
Yeah, 94, 95 in there. So yeah, I didn't talk to him at all. I mean, that would have been awesome. I would have been starstruck, I'm sure, because Chris Reeve, but no, not at all. But I researched with anybody else I could talk to, a lot of people that were part of the early projects and, things like that. But an anecdotal kind of funny thing is I wasn't a big comic book person. Sorry to admit that, walk of shame here. But when I was a kid, I was obsessed. At my grandma's house, she had a basket of old comics. And one was a Superboy comic with Superboy in the ring, punching the bad guy in the ring, because it was like he fought dirty and Superboy came in and punched him. And I was obsessed with this comic. Go figure. I don't even know why. It was so random that I love this one Superboy comic, and I just identified with it. It was so weird. Same thing with the Alive. I did that movie Alive with the rugby team that crashed. I was obsessed with that book when I was a kid. I used to carry it around when I was like 8 years old. It was like one of those bizarre things. And then of course, being in the movie years later was an interesting kind of full circle thing. But
well, let's jump to that. I mean, I wanted to talk about Cool as Ice, but let's talk about any Vanilla Ice stories.
Vanilla Ice. So he was super cool. He was like the nicest guy. I think he was misunderstood in a lot of ways. I mean, the whole thing happened. He got a little bit in trouble in a parking lot, I guess, while we were filming, because he was like, when we started filming, it was like he was this huge star in many ways. And I'm like, wow, I'm playing the bad guy against him. This will be interesting. It'll be fun. And then he got in trouble, and then some stuff came out in the press, whatever. And then his popularity declined. By the time the movie came out, I don't even know what it grossed, 20 or 30 million. I don't know, but they were expecting it to be a big success. But he was super cool. He's the nicest guy. We'd hang out and just, have fun and whatever. He had his posse, which insulated him a little bit, which was interesting. Mm-hmm. A bunch of really big fellows. But what's interesting about that movie is Janusz Kaminski. He's like the DP. I mean, he does like Schindler's List, and he's won like so many Academy Awards. He does every Spielberg movie. I think it was his first film. So I got to work with him, and I was like, and I saw him years later, and he's like, what's up? It was like really cool. I'm like, I'm not worthy, because he's phenomenal. I mean, his stuff, he's just so good. So that was his first thing. I'm sure it's not on his reel. Can you imagine? You're looking at Janusz's reel, and it's like Cool as Ice. Yeah, no.
But that movie's developed a cult following in the years.
Has it? Yeah.
Like, people were like, oh, I love this movie. That's the thing, is like time kind of equalizes everything. And the further you get from some of these things, all the baggage that came with it, like nobody remembers that Vanilla Ice got in trouble in the parking lot or during filming. Right. They just remember like, oh, I love those music, the songs at the time. And it just becomes a piece of their past, So It's cool.
It's very campy, you know. I think our show wasn't campy enough to ever be hip or cool again. But
I don't know about that. Look at this handsome guy right here.
Oh yeah. The horror.
I think it's pretty campy in a good way, not in a bad way, but
Your grocery clerk sent to deliver a bill. That's Apocalypse Now. It's before your time. Sorry.
I was born in the 70s. I'm older than you think. Let's talk about Alive. So Alive, Frank Marshall didn't direct a lot of, he's not known as a director necessarily, did a lot of producing stuff. You're working with Frank Marshall. Any stories from the set of Alive?
Yeah, that was an interesting.
Bad, not a great shoot.
No. It's just, you know, we're out in the middle of nowhere on a glacier. We're helicoptered in every day. They built this whole set on a glacier with like a real crash plane, and it was on hydraulics, so they could simulate the snow getting higher by lowering the plane, and the plane coming up, the snow getting lower. We were on diets of like 1,000 calories a day, and we're at like 12,000 feet, just like freezing our buns off, and it was just such a great experience. They wanted the actors to kind of go through like 1% maybe, right, but go through some of like the conditions in some ways, so they kind of did a lot of that, which was smart, I feel. But yeah, a lot of great actors in that film. We had a good time, but it was definitely a struggle. It was really interesting to meet the survivors too, and I got to go to Uruguay. The following holiday, I went and met all the survivors, because some of them won't fly anymore. And so I went down there and was there for like 2 weeks, and they took me into their homes. I got to do all these, you know, celebrations. That was super cool. One of the perks, you know.
Yeah. Wow. I skipped over something that we got to talk about Desert Kickboxer. I don't remember how many Academy Awards we were nominated for. I think we only took home 3 or 4 of them, but yeah. Oh, you got robbed.
Phenomenal. No, phenomenal piece of, I think everything about it. I don't know that you could improve a film. You know, when you watch a masterpiece like that, how could you make it better? And the answer is no, you cannot.
No, it's just carved in stone. Well, he said you were carved in stone. You were like chiseled out of rock in that movie, right? So like, did you come from bodybuilding and martial arts training?
Never. I only 2 times I ever lifted weights my whole life, and I didn't even lift weights. I did these, I think they were called Kaiser machines. They used air pressure or something for Superboy, and for that I did a little bit of that. But I was a martial artist, you know, that's what I always did. So I was, you know, I don't even know that I lifted a lot of, or did a lot of the weight stuff with Desert Kickboxer. I don't
You're making people really mad right now, because there are people who are lifting like, you know, hours a day to get this physique that you seem to, I don't know, it sounds like you're just genetically predisposed to this like physique.
Well, I think there is some genetics. Like my dad had the fastest 40-yard dash in the world. Like my dad was this amazing athlete, and he a football player, and he ended up making the New York Giants, not New York Jets. And he got kicked off the team for, you know, alcohol and curfew violations, but that's another story. Anyway, I'm not that way now. I got, you know, I'm definitely not, I don't know, my muscle, what do you call it? Fat index or whatever they call it, probably in the 30s, 20s. I don't know. So that was the long time ago.
Well, it looks great. I wish that movie could get re-released somehow, because I don't know that it's in circulation. Listen, it needs to die. Love these movies.
It needs to die. Yes. No. What is wrong with you?
I like stuff like that. There's hey, we're talking about Cool as Ice, right? There's a charm to, you know, popping that VHS in the player and just watching somebody kick butt.
Yeah. I wonder if it falls into the category of they're not laughing with you. I'm wondering, it's one of those things where you go, it's you know, laughing at you, I think is what it is.
No, I don't think so. I don't know. Anyway. There will be comments that
I don't know. I haven't seen it in 20 years, so I don't know.
There are going to be comments on this video, and I bet they're going to be very supportive, because people love this stuff. I mean, listen, you see, like, I'm surrounded by movies. Like, cult movies are a huge deal. So yeah, I don't know, own it, embrace it. Like, it's part of you. Untouchables. I think it's really cool that they bring back the Untouchables in the 90s for a new generation. What was that? How was that experience for you?
It was interesting. It turned into the Al Capone show, and I don't blame them. If you're a writer and you're Chris, what was it? Chris Crow, or what was the main producer? I think it was Chris Crow, the creator. Anyway, he's got this team of writers. Are you going to write for the good guys, the Untouchables? I was one of those. I was like the Andy Garcia character. Or are you going to write for Al Capone and Frank Nitti and that whole crew? So it ended up becoming that. It was still a great experience. I mean, great money. I'd come in, sometimes say 3 lines, and then I'd be done for the episode. And then some episodes I'd have my own episode, which was great.
Yeah.
But David James Elliott, who ended up going on to do JAG, JAG, he was one of the Untouchables with me. And yeah, it was fun. I mean, we filmed in Chicago, and I love Chicago, so that was cool.
Yeah, period. The whole period costume thing with the fedoras and Tommy guns, all that jazz.
Driving, I love to drive anything like tractors, backhoes. I mean, I love heavy machinery. So I was the driver, right? So I got to drive all these old cars, these old 4-cylinders, and you're adjusting the timing, which is a lever on the steering column. And I mean, just all this, I just loved it. And then of course we were shooting Tommy guns, real Tommy guns, and 1911, which is a 45 caliber. But yeah, that was our sidearm. And, we got to bust up some illegal brewery operations and tax evasion and all that stuff. So
yeah,
it's cool.
Walker, Texas Ranger, Chuck Norris.
Yeah.
The icon.
Chuck was a really nice guy. I mean, people, you hear the whole, the Chuck Norris jokes and all that stuff. He's just the nicest guy. I mean, I never felt like, oh, this guy's full of himself and blah, blah, blah. And it was just fun. It was fun to be a part of that. I think that's another kind of my whole career. The more and more you're bringing it up, I'm realizing, man, a lot of campy stuff that I did. Not intentionally campy, maybe, but
it was cool at the time. It's only camp in retrospect, I think.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it was fun. That was a good experience.
I love this stuff. Yeah. People love it. Hey, the Walker Texas Ranger is so popular they rebooted it with for a new generation. There's a new Walker Texas Ranger on TV right now. Yeah,
a new characters and stuff. Not like
it's Jared Padalecki from Supernatural, and it's like it's a reboot. They've rebooted Walker, and it's in maybe the second or third. I think it's in the 3rd season. So
wow,
I think it's on Paramount Plus. One of the things that I am really interested in is you did a spot on Viper. Now, when I was in the 90s, Viper and that was the coolest show. It was Bilson and DeMeo, who were incredible creators, in my opinion. They did the Flash series, the original Flash series with the 1990 one. And you had a spot on that. That car was, man, the Dodge Viper was an amazing car. And I feel like it was like Knight Rider for a new generation. Like they built this show around a car. What was your experience on that show? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do. I'll tell you a funny story. So I did the Viper thing, and I chose to do a Southern accent, which was a strange choice, but I just wanted to kind of like this character. So I came on as the guy with the motorcycle version of the Viper car. So my motorcycle transformed and all that, and I was like a loose cannon kind of deal. Cut to the lead actor leaving the show. Maybe a few months later, I don't remember the timing of it. And so they had me in as like to replace him, to take over the show. And they had a couple other guys. And so we tested, we went to, I think it was Paramount, and we tested over at the Paramount lot. And I'm like, wow, this will be interesting. And at the last minute, the original guy, so the guy that left the show, Cahey, or I don't remember his name. The original guy came back in. So they got him. So I ended up doing that.
All right. There are going to be people who watch this video just to hear you talk about Models Inc. and Melrose Place. So that huge shows, huge legacy. I mean, like still getting talked about today, still getting seen today.
Yeah.
How was that for you?
Awesome. Carrie Ann Moss was on Models Inc. with me, which was great. And she was so super cool. And I'd run into her years later after she'd done The Matrix. And I'm like, not worthy kind of thing. But super cool people. I mean, it's Models Inc., I feel like I played a priest on there who got a girl pregnant or something like that.
Or you were a reverend character. You definitely
initially, and then I left the priesthood or the whatever hood. I don't know if they specified what religion it was. I hope I didn't offend anybody by taking on that role. But that was interesting. And then Melrose Place, which was Models Inc. I think was a spinoff of Melrose Place, and I did Melrose Place later, I think.
Yeah, I think that's how it worked.
Anyway,
I think Models Inc. ended, and they kind of folded it in.
Something like that. But that was fun. Melrose Place was a well-oiled machine, right? It did the last season, the 26 episodes, and you come in and it's like you're only working certain sets. So whenever they're shooting those sets in those days, those are the days you work. So you have like 3-4 days off if you're not Like I'm never in the hospital scenes. I'm never at Jack, whatever Wagner's house, whatever, so, and there's certain characters that you interact with. So you shoot those on the days you work and then you're off. So it was kind of cool that way. Like, you work, as opposed to most like movies, you're sitting around all day and they might not ever use you.
Yeah.
Alive was that way, right? Because they never knew in the plane which way they were going to see, and you might be in a shot and you're not. So you were always on set for everything the whole time. And for me, I was on for the entire time because I was in the trekking, which there were only three of us in the trekking, and that was a third of the shoot. But they ended up cutting an hour out of it, so my part went from like way high to like whatever. But yeah, I'm digressing. Melrose was fun. Yeah, interesting show.
Well, did you bring up that experience? Did you prefer film or television, as to work in one medium over the other? Was there one that you were preferential?
Every actor prefers film. I don't care what they say. I mean, as the creative, as the artistic, as the now, is the money better in TV? Yeah, you score a TV series that gets into syndication or something, and you're like, you're set for life financially, but creatively, 99% of actors would rather do film. I mean, studio features, of course. Right. That's the pinnacle, right? And then when someone broke that barrier, like I turned down Joey audition for Friends. Like the producer said, just come in at the end. It's a producer session. I'm like, I'm not doing a half-hour sitcom. That was the mentality back then. I remember what year that was. And I was like, I'm not going in for that. Like, seriously. But, he was a much better Joey. But I did have an opportunity to go in and audition at the very end of that, possibly test or whatever. But I said no. And like, I look back now, I'm like, wow. And I'm glad, in retrospect. But at the time, I was like, when the show became popular. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was like, no, I want a film career, But then people started crossing those boundaries around that time. This is 25 years ago, probably. And now it's like, no one cares. Everyone goes back and forth. So,
yeah, I feel like TV now is, in some ways it's more popular than film because there's so many, I mean, look at what's happened in the last, I think it probably started with The Sopranos really. And then this huge, there's so much talent in television and so many film actors coming to television to tell finite stories. They're not signing up for 9-year deals or anything. They'll do a season. You look at something like True Detective or whatever. So it's interesting how it's all changed. But you were in a Christmas movie, The Christmas Card, with Ed Asner. And now Christmas movies, I know now these Christmas movies are like, I mean, they are bigger than they are huge. I think one of the channels, maybe it was Hallmark, this past Christmas, they had like 40 new Christmas movies during the month of December, which I don't even know. That's more days. That's more movies than there are days in the month. So, but I think 2006 is, I believe, what this was. And that's kind of, I feel like, had that happened yet? Were Christmas movies this like, oh, well, that's where you go. And it's a huge industry.
No, in fact, when we did The Christmas Card, it was their highest rated original programming that Hallmark Channel had ever done in their history. Wow. They paid like, I don't know how many millions of dollars for March of the Penguins, and it just smoked everything. And it created this movement. There were other Christmas movies, a handful, but not many. And the success of The Christmas Card was so big that it paved the way, for better or worse, because now it's just this formula of oversaturated. It's like YouTube in the early days was interesting, and now it's just flooded with a bunch of crap. And how do you find the good stuff amidst the crap? And just some of these movies are just painful, and some are fun and decent, but it's a sacred place for the people that want to say, hey, I can take my kids. There's not going to be any gratuitous violence. There's not going to be any crazy, So, and I love it that in that way, there's one sacred place. I'm not saying Hallmark. I think there's another channel. Something sprung out of Hallmark that there was something that went on. I don't know the whole story, but just that there is a place for people and have kind of family style. Because even Disney movies, you take your 6-year-old, 7-year-old to see some of these Disney movies, and they're freaking traumatic. You think Disney, it's okay. No, it'll be safe for the kids. No, it's not. Some of them are disturbing. Mm-hmm. Not all, but some. And it's just kind of like that. So I think that there is an avenue there. There's a lot of Christmas movies, like you said. I think there's probably too many. Hanukkah movies, Christmas movies. I mean, they're going to run out of names eventually. What are they going to do then? It's like Christmas Cookie Ranch or something. I mean,
somebody just copyrighted that. You just gave somebody an idea.
They got the website.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, go figure.
How was Ed Asner to work with?
Oh, he was so cool. You know, if someone wasn't cool, I'm not going to say there. You know, it's like when you watch those making of, and everybody's like, "Oh, the director was amazing. Steven Spielberg was so great to work with," and it's just a fluff piece. Like, just tell us the truth. What was it really like on set? But it's, you know, a lot of those making ofs are just promo pieces. But he really was super cool, and we got to hang out with him a few times. We got to go to the Pentagon, which was kind of fun. We were going to go to the White House because the Christmas card was that popular. And it was a time with morale and the troops and all that. It was one of those things. But because of Ed's political kind of skew, I think wasn't W in the White House at that time, Bush. They nixed the White House visit because of that, I heard. But we got to go to the Pentagon, which is fun. But Ed Asner's super cool. And I mean, Elf is one of everybody's all-time favorite Christmas movies, right? So
yeah, Mary Tyler Moore. I mean, he's a legend.
Yeah, he was just the nicest guy. We would get in these long talks about all kinds of things, and I talked to him about socialism, and you know, because I just wanted to hear his points of view, because I feel like a lot of people are misunderstood, and politically, I'm right. You know, I'm like kind of like maybe libertarian or something. I'm kind of right in the middle, but I'm always interested in other people's points of view, and just very intelligent and really, really awesome guy.
Well, tell me what you're doing right now. Where have you ended up at the moment?
Where have I been lately?
See, your Wikipedia page says that you are a former actor, and that's where someone is Now, we know Wikipedia is never wrong, right? They never.
Oh God, Wikipedia. It said on there that I had a DUI at one point, and I'm like, who comes up with this? On my life, never gotten a DUI. I did get a ticket during the Superboy thing.
Well, so that's the story, is that you got a DUI.
I never got it. I swear on my life, I never got a DUI. I've never been stopped for a DUI.
Okay.
Whatever. I did get a ticket on private property. And that was, I was doing something kind of silly, but it wasn't what they said it was. I wrote a letter that was stupid of me at the time, and they ended up using that, saying, "Oh, you shouldn't have done that." And I'm like, and then that's one of the reasons they say I left the show, but it really had to do with money. They kept saying, "Oh, we're going to pay you more. You're doing all your own stunts. You had a couple accidents, close near death stuff, literally, that happened." And they're like, "We're going to get you more money." And then they came down. They said, "No, we're not." I'm like, "Well, I'm not coming back." And that's the actual truth of what happened.
Near death experience, near death stunts.
Oh, they flew me. The wire effects guys had to go back to England for a funeral. So I didn't even know. You're in character. You're on the set. I'm not really paying attention to who's operating the rig. And it was it wasn't even, I want to say it was, one guy was the prop department. He lets go of, there's a rope that's attached to the wire that I'm connected to in a harness with these counterweights. And you can't let it go, because they let it go. And I shot straight up and took up all the slack in these 1.2 millimeter wires, which are only rated, I think, at 300 pounds each. Me at 190, 200 pounds at 3 miles an hour exceeds that. So I went up and then came back down, bam, and it didn't snap the wires. At 60 feet, I would have died. They flew me into telephone lines that had electrical lines above it, and I missed those by a little bit. I mean, it was crazy what happened. And there was a lot of other things too that happened, but I'm not faulting anybody. It was truly my bad. I had a contract, but they shouldn't have promised me more money, and no one would come up with the money. So the producers, the creators, the Viacom, it was just a mess. And I was like, "Well, I'm not coming back." And they were like, "Yeah, you are." And I said, "Well, we'll see." And I could be stubborn and stupid. I was 23. I wish in hindsight I'd honored my contract, just because it's a contract, and I entered into it. And so that I do feel bad about, because that's an integrity issue. But I never got a DUI. And they dropped the ticket. So go figure. But anyway, moving on. What were we just talking about?
Well, I want to know how you ended up in you're currently doing a lot of help for people.
Oh, yeah. So I started doing the work that I do now, which is helping people with quality of life issues, kind of chronic pain, stress, addiction. I started doing that at the beginning when I started acting, but I did it for free. And then about 15 years ago, I started charging. I did donation, then I did sliding scale, and then I started charging, and then it just took off. And I love it. I feel like I'm so much better at this. I've worked in hospitals. I worked at the Betty Ford Center in the pain management program. That was amazing, great experience for like a year and a half, got to help a lot of people. But my whole thing is I help people rewrite the program. It's like people run their life with a program, and the program was written almost always in the early years of our life. And so it's our belief system, it's how much money we make, it's the quality of our relationships, our choices, everything is this really bound in this program that people are just running unconsciously. So I help people have access to that and to rewrite the program and to see that we don't store memory in the mind. Memory shows up in the mind, but it's actually held in the body in a big way too. So it's like our bodies remember stuff. So as we clear that out, we start getting more possibility, start seeing life improve. And I just love it. I mean, I love doing it.
Where did it come from? You said you've been, I mean, your site says that you've been doing this for 35 years. How does someone who's in their early 20s have the experience to
you know, I had a miserable time. I'll spare you the childhood. I'll spare you the kind of things that happened in my life. But it was, to me, a desperation out of like, I got to do something or else I'm not going to be able to stay on this planet. It was like that level of intensity. And so I started discovering like things like self-help, right? All these kind of things that were out there. Most of it was crap, but there was a handful of them that were like, wow, this is really helpful, right? So I do more of that, and I'd integrate something else, and I travel in another country and study with somebody here and read this book and take this seminar. I mean, I studied thousands and thousands of different paths, different people, gurus, meditation, you know, anything you could imagine that could help the human condition. I really wanted to help myself. And then as I was helping myself, I'm like, this is cool. I want to share this and help other people. So I did, but I didn't charge for it because I just loved doing it. And I was making a living in the acting world. And then eventually I just made the transition. I'm like, what am I doing in this acting thing? As I don't love it because the struggle, I love working, but I didn't love all the other stuff. Mm-hmm. And I love this other thing. And I feel like I'm so much better at this than I ever was in the acting. And so that's what I do. And I've gotten to work with some of the most amazing Academy Award winners and Olympic athletes, professional athletes, homeless people, rock and roll stars. I mean, I've had some of the most incredible experiences ever. I'll tell you a really quick anecdotal thing. I could tell you thousands of crazy stories, but my favorite band growing up, which will remain nameless because I have to honor it's actually a HIPAA law because I met them through Cedars-Sinai Hospital. I was working with a cardiologist, head of clinical cardiology at Cedars, coming into their office, going into the hospital, working with their patients. So this doctor calls me and says, hey, I got an emergency. One of my patients is getting ready to perform on national television and they can't stand up. I cannot get them a muscle relaxer fast enough. They got 25 or 30 minutes before they're literally going on national TV. They were performing for I think it was the Olympics at the time. And I'm like, yeah, just have them call me. And so they call me. So I'm a little starstruck because this is like my favorite group growing up and it's their lead singer. And I'm like, this is amazing, right? So I worked on them over the phone for like 3-4 minutes and they were completely fine. The back pain was gone. They were walked on. They did a great concert. So when they came back to Los Angeles, they wanted to meet me. So I met them at the clinic and they were like, a little spooked out because some of the stuff I do is a little weird. I mean, it's strange, but hey, if it works, who cares? And they were like, you know, just really humbled, and I was humbled, of course, too. And it was just great to meet them. But I have so many of those experiences. I mean, just weird stuff. Go figure.
That's wonderful. Where for people who want to know more, where should they go check it out?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So my website is healthbeyondbelief.com, or you can go to johnnewton.com and it redirects. So yeah, that's that. And there's free stuff on there. It's not like, you know, you got to buy something. There's all kinds of interesting information and free stuff. I do a free call every month for people, and it's 90 minutes and you can get something worked on the call. It's a little odd. When I talk about it out loud, it sounds a little strange. My whole life feels surreal, but hey, people are getting help. I love it. And it's all good.
The results are all that matter, right?
Well, exactly. And a lot of people get help. I'm not, I don't make medical claims. I'm really conscious because I work with doctors. I work with therapists. But man, I've worked with people that, survive plane crashes and can't even go near an airplane. 20 minutes, 30 minutes, they're on a plane and they're completely fine, no stress at all. I've helped 9/11 survivors and just so many people with all kinds of wild things, cops who've been shot on duty and, can't leave their house, just wild stuff. A lot of vets who've come back from the theater of war and just struggle, and helping them is awesome. I love doing that too. So yeah, it's a great path. I feel humbled to be able to do it. So
the poetry here is that you started your career as Superboy and saving people, and now here you are all these years later saving people. It's this trajectory.
Well, I love that, and I don't ever claim to save people, but I understand what you're saying. I help people
helping people.
Yeah, helping people. I do help
giving them the tools to help themselves.
Yes, helping them connect to their higher power, that whatever that is for them, because I have people of every denomination and people who don't believe in a higher power, but the higher power is a part of it, for people, because there is some form of higher intelligence in the universe, and so we're just tapping into that for the help, because sometimes we need to access more than ourselves for our reference, for everything really. So that's a big part of it for sure. So
excellent. I know in the past you've attended the Superman celebration in Metropolis, Illinois, which
twice.
You're still kind of active and engaging with fans of that show. Do you have any plans to do that again? Would you do it again?
I think I did it like a few years ago for charity, for a charity I was involved with called Lollipop. I was one of the founding volunteers, where we screen current release movies in hospitals for kids that can't leave the hospital and all that. So I did it for that. And then I feel like it was like a 40-year anniversary or a 50-year anniversary for Superman or something. It was a big deal in Metropolis, so I thought I'd go and do it. And I hadn't done it since like whatever it was, 1988 or something. But it was really cool. I really enjoyed seeing the museum. It's an interesting place. Have you been?
I have been. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I have a video from there. It's really remarkable. That museum, especially. I mean, they've got it's like everything.
Yeah.
I was stunned. Like Supergirl costumes and Superman costumes, props, and like life-size statues and all kinds of stuff. And then you go out, and of course, into the square outside, and there's this huge Superman statue. I love it. it.
It's a cool place. If you've never experienced it and you're definitely a DC or a Superman fan, it's a great place to go for sure.
Well, I want to thank you I'm going to say goodbye to you off the air after we finish recording, but I want to thank you for being here talking to me about this. This has been such a pleasure for me. And I want people to go check out what you're doing. I'll put the links in the description of this video, but this has been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Heath. I appreciate it. It was a fun.
Can you guys tell how much I enjoyed this conversation? I think it really comes through, and he's such a great guy. I mean, humble, down to earth, proud of what he's done, good experiences, right? But you can tell it didn't go to his head. But he's also just where he's at now is such a kind, helpful place, and this was just really an absolute blast. And I want to tell you guys, behind the scenes too, he was every bit as gracious and kind as he was in the interview. So it's always, I don't know, it just means a lot to me when you can have that experience with someone, you have an interaction with someone, and they just really feel locked into you in that moment. That's kind of rare, and it was wonderful. So this was great. I hope you guys enjoyed this because I had a blast with it, and I will definitely be following what Mr. Newton is doing with his own practice. So that, guys, this is a lot of, these podcasts are a lot of fun. I continue to hear from a lot of you guys saying that you like the audio version because, I'm of two minds on this, because YouTube is, on one hand, I know that it can be great for long form entertainment, but I also know, I have my analytics, right? Most people are not interested in watching long form content on YouTube. We live busy lives. There's commutes, right? So I know that the audio version is very, it's a key component to that. So I guess maybe I want to hear from you and just hear your own experience. Like, do you prefer audio? Do you prefer video? It's just really, the audience is so segmented. That's really what it comes down to, is different people want different things from YouTube. I'm trying to be a lot more transparent about YouTube because it is difficult. That's to say the least. YouTube is, I said to someone the other day, I posted a video on my channel very recently where I'm talking about the problem with YouTube burnout, because this is a very real thing. I would encourage you guys to go check out that video. It's very short. I'm joined by Brian Sauer from Just the Discs podcast and Pure Cinema podcast. I mean, these guys are huge. They have regular engagements with Quentin Tarantino. So for him to join me for that conversation was very meaningful to me. But what it comes through, so YouTube it's a challenge. It's a lot of hard work. You can be a hobbyist on YouTube, but YouTube will only, in my experience, YouTube will only reward you for going the extra mile. They really want you to commit. I want to say that YouTube wants a little piece of your soul. Maybe not even a little piece. Maybe they just want all of it. I don't know. So here's the thing. When I start talking about this, more and more people, like, that's my experience too. I'm really struggling. Thank you for talking about this in an open forum. So I'm trying to be more transparent. And that's why I say at the beginning of the episode, hey, please subscribe. Please give us a... And it's so interesting because I say this in every YouTube video, there's a subscribe thing. In every podcast I talk about subscribing, yet people aren't doing it. They're like, oh, that doesn't apply to me. But like, why, if you care about someone's content, why would you not subscribe to it? I don't really understand that. If you like something, why would you not take the time to give... It's like a fraction of a second. You go click and you've done it. I don't really understand that but I can tell you guys the reason I keep saying is because people don't do it. So it's a challenge. This is all a challenge. Putting myself out here on a regular basis is a challenge. Trying to connect to audiences and have meaningful conversations on a platform that does not seem made for meaningful conversations. Maybe that's too dramatic of a statement. Maybe YouTube itself is not an issue. Maybe it's the culture of YouTube and what people seem to want from it. That's a whole other topic. And I'm doing some investigation on this. I'm reading some books about this. Not like, I'm not one of these people who's like, I want to crack the code. I know what the code is. The code is post as often as possible. You post shorts, you go live. You just really use it as a business tool. That's the code. But I believe that people are not businesses. I believe that we are not a corporation. That the world is not. The world wants to be run as a corporation, but it is not a corporation. We are people, and we have to have meaningful connection with each other. And you can't really do that when you're constantly selling a product or selling yourself as a product. So I know what they want, and whoever they is, even if it's a computer program, I know what it wants. But I am hesitant to. Well, I'm not just hesitant. I'm just not going to do it. That it's my party. And I'm going to create the kind of things that I want. And I want to project it to you guys a transparency and an honesty. So all that to say, YouTube is it can be tough. And I hear from a lot of you guys that say thank you for the podcast because it bypasses all that YouTube shenaniganery and allows us to just directly tap into the conversations themselves. So I want to see that grow. That's what it comes down to. The podcast downloads versus the YouTube views are not even close. Like, most people seem to be coming to the video versions, but I want to see that the audio versions pick up. Here's another thing. I want to not just be associated with YouTube. I don't want to be Heath, the YouTuber, Cereal at Midnight on YouTube, as at the start of the episode, right? Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I'm everywhere, man. I don't want to just be Heath, the YouTuber. I want to have a diversified playing field here so that people can find Cereal at Midnight in lots of different places. That's where you come in. So please engage. You got to let me know what works for you, and we'll kind of figure this thing out together. But really, most importantly, I want you to know how much I appreciate you. You are here because you connect with us, and I think you connect with us because I am real, and I'm not, hey guys, we're cool. There's so many people that present in the content creation sphere, since that sounds very professional, so it's very business-like. They're characters. They're not themselves. Now, you turn it up a little bit, right? You gotta put a camera on yourself or put a microphone on your face. Turn it up just a little bit so people don't get bored. But I'm not a character. I'm not pretending to be something that I'm not. I'm not Heath, the angry video guy, the angry movie club. Like, that's not who I am. I don't think that's sustainable. I'm just real. I want to be honest, and I want to have conversations that make us happier, make us better, give us more to think about. And you seem to want that too. So thank you. This is all a thank you to say thank you for that. So guys, contact me. Let me know what you think. I want to engage with you. These are always, I like to have the sense of community about these things is very important to me, so that it's not a one, and I say this again because so many people just listen or they just watch and they don't engage. But that engagement lets me know that's how we build a sense of community, and that's very important to me. The idea of these groups of people that come together and support each other and are able to talk about things. We talk a lot about movies. Well, I like when I see people talking about movies with each other in the comments of a video or wherever it may be on my Twitter. And they're not talking to me, they're talking with each other through me. I love that. I think that's great. So let's do more of that. Guys, thank you. I appreciate you so very much. Take care. More exciting conversations coming soon. Oh, you don't even know. You don't even know, man. It's going to be great. Take care. Until next time, I will catch you later.